I never expected her to remember my name, let alone everything else. That's the thing about women like her. They don't do anything loudly. They don't flirt the way girls my age do. They don't try. They don't need to. They just exist with this quiet steadiness that makes you feel like your whole life has been too messy. And somehow, they notice you anyway. It started at the laundromat. Not some romantic movie laundromat with soft lighting and background music. Just a small 1-2 streets away from my apartment, with flickering fluorescent lights and machines that always sounded like they were arguing with each other. I went there every Wednesday night because my place didn't have a washer. And honestly, it gave me something to do. Something that made the week feel structured, even when everything else wasn't. That night, I came in with my basket of clothes and my headphones on, but nothing playing. I did that sometimes, wore them like an excuse not to talk to anyone. The air smelled like detergent and warm fabric. The same smell every time. Familiar. Safe. She was already there, sitting on one of the plastic chairs near the dryers, legs crossed, reading a book like she belonged there. Like laundromats were meant for people like her. At first, I didn't recognize her. Then she looked up, and it hit me. Mrs. Hale, my friend's mom. I hadn't seen her since high school, back when she was just background. A presence in the kitchen when my friend and I raided the fridge. A voice asking if we wanted more pizza rolls. A woman who always seemed calm, even when the house was loud. Now she looked different. Not younger. Not older either. Just sharper. Like life had shaped her into someone quieter and more careful. Her hair was tied back in a loose bun, and she wore a long cardigan the color of coffee. She didn't have makeup on, at least not the obvious kind, but her face still looked put together in a way I couldn't explain. When she saw me, she didn't smile right away. She just stared for a second, like she was sorting through a memory. Then she said, "Ethan." My name, spoken like it mattered. I froze with my laundry basket in my hands. My brain did that stupid thing where it panics over something simple. "Yeah," I said. "Ooh." She closed her book slowly, like she wasn't in a rush. "Wow, it's been a long time." I nodded and tried to laugh, but it came out awkward. "Yeah, I didn't expect to see you here." She glanced at my laundry basket and lifted an eyebrow slightly. I could say the same. That was it. That tiny joke. But the way she said it, soft, dry, like she wasn't trying to be funny, made me smile for real. I put my basket down and started sorting my clothes, pretending my hands weren't suddenly clumsy. I kept sneaking quick looks at her, like a thief. She was folding a napkin she'd brought with her. One of those cloth ones, not paper. She folded it slowly, perfectly, and set on her lap. Then she went back to her book like she hadn't just made my entire night feel strange. I should have just done my laundry and left. But I didn't. I kept thinking about how she remembered my name so easily. Most people didn't. Not anymore. My phone buzzed in my pocket at one point, and out of habit, I checked it. Nothing. Just my screen lighting up from some random notification I didn't care about. I stared at it longer than I needed to. There were texts I'd typed out earlier that day and never sent. A half-written message to my ex that I kept saving like it was a draft of my dignity. "You ever miss me?" Delete. "Hope you're doing okay." Delete. Eventually, I shoved my phone away and watched the washing machine spin like it had answers. That's when I heard her voice again. "You still play basketball?" she asked. I looked over surprised. "No, not really." She tilted her head slightly. "You used to talk about it all the time." I swallowed. "Yeah, I guess I stopped." She didn't say why. She didn't say what happened. She just nodded like she understood something I hadn't even said out loud. Her eyes dropped briefly to my hands, like she noticed the way my fingers kept tapping against my jeans. Like she could see my nervousness without making it a big deal. Then she went back to her book, and that should have been the end of it. Just an ordinary coincidence in an ordinary laundromat. But when my clothes finished drying and I stood up to leave, she looked at me again. This time she smiled. Not polite, not forced, just warm. "Take care of yourself, Ethan," she said. Her voice made it sound like a request. I nodded. "You too, Mrs. Hale." As I pushed open the door, the cold night air hit my face, and I told myself not to think about her again. But when I got home, my phone buzzed. One new message, from a number I didn't have saved. "Mrs. Hale, I hope this isn't weird, but it was really nice seeing you tonight. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Because for the first time in a long time, I didn't know what the right thing to do was. I didn't reply right away. Not because I didn't want to, because my brain instantly started doing that thing where it tries to protect me from anything that might make my life more complicated than it already was. It was just a text, a normal text, but it didn't feel normal. I read it 3 times, like the words might change. I hope this isn't weird, but it was really nice seeing you tonight. Her typing style was exactly how I remembered her speaking. Careful, considerate, like she was always making room for other people's comfort before her own. I sat on the edge of my bed with my laundry still in the basket. My room smelled like dryer sheets and cheap cologne. The silence in my apartment felt too loud, like it always did at night. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I typed, "It was nice seeing you too," then deleted it. Typed again, "Not weird at all. I was surprised you remembered me." Deleted that too. I didn't want to sound like a kid. I didn't want to sound eager. I didn't want to sound like whatever this was starting to feel like. In the end, I just wrote me, "Not weird. I'm glad I ran into you." Simple. Safe. Her reply came a minute later. "Mrs. Hale, good." Because I was worried I'd crossed a line. That line sat in my chest for a while. Cross a line. Like she already knew there was one. I stared at the message until my screen dimmed, then tossed my phone onto the pillow like it had burned me. And still, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Not in a dirty way. Not even in a romantic way at first. Just the way she looked at me. Like she remembered the version of me that used to laugh easily. The version that didn't come home to an empty apartment and eat cereal out of the box at midnight. 2 days later, I saw her again. Not at the laundromat. At the grocery store. I was in the aisle staring at pasta sauce like it required a life decision. And when I turned my head, she was there, holding a basket with bread, tea, and one of those little containers of strawberries. Of course she bought strawberries. She looked up and smiled, but it wasn't the same casual smile from the laundromat. It was smaller, almost cautious, like she was checking the room before letting herself be seen with me. "Ethan," she said quietly. "Hi," I replied, suddenly aware of how stupid I probably looked in sweatpants and a hoodie that had a stain on the sleeve. Her eyes flicked down to my basket, instant noodles, frozen pizza, and a cheap energy drink. She didn't judge, but her mouth twitched like she was trying not to. "You're surviving," she said. I huffed a laugh. "Barely." She held up her tea box. "Chamomile. Helps with sleep." I shrugged. "Ich sleep fine." Her gaze didn't move away. "Do you?" That was the problem with her. She didn't ask questions like they were questions. She asked them like she already knew the answer and was giving you a chance to be honest. I swallowed. "No," I admitted. "Not really." She nodded slowly, like that confirmed something. Then she did something that caught me off guard. She reached in her basket, pulled out a second box of tea, same chamomile, and held it out toward me. "For you," she said. I stared at it. "I could buy my own tea." "I know," she replied. "But you won't." Her tone was calm, but it made my face heat up. I took it anyway. Our fingers brushed for half a second, and it shouldn't have meant anything. But it did, because she pulled her hand back like she felt it too. We stood there for a moment, both pretending the shelves were more interesting than they were. Then she cleared her throat. "You still talk to Claire?" she asked. "Claire? My friend. Her daughter." The name landed like a warning sign. "Not much," I said. "She's busy. Different city now." Mrs. Hale's eyes softened, and she looked down at the strawberries in her basket. "She doesn't call me much either," she admitted. The way she said it wasn't bitter. It was worse than that. It was acceptance. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. She gave a small smile. "Guess we're both not as necessary as we used to be." That hit me harder than it should have, because I knew that feeling too well. People didn't say goodbye anymore. They just slowly stopped needing you. I wanted to tell her that Claire still talked about her sometimes, that she mattered, that she wasn't invisible, but the words stuck. Instead, I said something stupid. "She's probably just being young." Mrs. Hale let out a quiet laugh. "That's a generous way to put it." Then she looked at me again, and for a second her expression changed, like she almost forgot she was supposed to be careful, like she almost forgot she was someone's mother. Her eyes stayed on mine a beat too long, and in that beat, my mind betrayed me. I imagined her in my apartment, sitting on my couch, drinking tea. I imagined her laughing at something dumb I said. I imagined her reaching out and fixing the collar of my hoodie like she used to when we were teenagers at her house. It was such a simple image, and it felt dangerous. She stepped back slightly, like she could feel the shift too. "Well," she said, her voice quieter now, "I should go." "Yeah," I murmured. "Yeah, of course." She turned, then paused. Her hand lifted, hesitated, then gently touched my arm right above my wrist. Barely a touch, but deliberate. "Take care of yourself," she said again. And I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. She walked away down the aisle, strawberries and tea in her basket. And I stood there holding that chamomile box like it was something fragile, like it meant more than it should. After the grocery store, I told myself it would go back to normal, that it was just a weird coincidence, that I'd run into her, feel that uncomfortable pull in my chest, and then life would keep moving the way it always did, quietly, indifferently, without offering explanations. But the thing about normal is, once it breaks, you start noticing how fake it always was. The next Wednesday, I went back to the laundromat. Same time, same basket, same headphones with nothing playing. And she wasn't there. I didn't realize how much I expected her to be until I was standing in the middle of the room, scanning the chairs like an idiot. I felt stupid, embarrassed, even though no one was watching. So I loaded my clothes, dropped the coins in, and sat down. And waited. 10 minutes passed. 15. The door opened once, and my head lifted automatically, too fast. Just some guy in a work uniform. I looked back down at my phone and pretended I didn't care. But I did. I cared enough that I almost texted her. Almost. I opened the message thread and stared at her last text from days ago. "Mrs. Hale, take care of yourself." Like she was signing off from something. Like she was trying to keep it clean. I typed, "Are you coming tonight?" Then I deleted it. Because what kind of question was that? What kind of person asks their friend's mom if she's coming to the laundromat like it's a date? I shoved my phone back into my pocket and watched the machine spin, round and round, my clothes tumbling like they didn't know where to settle. Maybe she just changed her schedule. Maybe she'd realized it was weird. Maybe she decided it wasn't worth the risk of being seen with me. That thought should have made me feel relieved. Instead, it made me feel hollow. 2 days later, I was coming home from work when I saw her car in the driveway. Her car wasn't usually there at that hour, and I knew her car. I'd seen it parked outside Claire's house 100 times growing up. Same silver sedan, same small dent near the back bumper. Except now, it wasn't outside Claire's house. It was outside mine. I stopped at the bottom of the steps, keys in my hand, suddenly unsure if I should go in. The porch light was on, warm yellow, like someone was expecting me. I stepped inside quietly, and the first thing I heard was her voice. Not talking, humming, soft, almost absent-minded. I followed the sound into the kitchen. She was standing at the counter, sleeves rolled up, washing something that looked like a mug. Her hair was down this time, falling over one shoulder in a way that made her look less guarded. She turned when she heard my footsteps, and her face changed. That quick shift, like she'd forgotten for a moment who she was supposed to be. Then she smiled. "Hi," she said. My throat tightened. I glanced at the counter. A kettle, 2 cups, steam still rising faintly. "Yeah, of course. I didn't know you were here," I said. "I know." She looked down at the mug, drying it slowly with a dish towel. I wasn't sure if I should be. I walked closer, but not too close. I stopped on the other side of the kitchen island, like it was a boundary line. "What are you doing here?" I asked, trying to make it sound casual. She hesitated. Her fingers tightened around the towel. "I was in the area," she said. Then, after a beat, quieter, almost like she regretted lying, "I wanted to check on you." That hit harder than it should have. Check on you. No one checked on me anymore. I leaned against the counter, eyes dropping to her hands. Her hands always looked like they knew what they were doing. Mine didn't. "I'm fine," I said, even though my voice didn't believe me. She nodded, but her eyes stayed on my face. "Ethan," she said, and there was something careful in the way she said it. "You don't have to pretend with me." I let out a small breath, a laugh without humor. I don't even know who I'm pretending for anymore. It made her go still, just for a second, like she understood that sentence too well. She poured the tea, slid 1 cup across the counter toward me. I took it, our fingers brushing again. This time she didn't pull away as fast. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was full of things neither of us wanted to name. She sat down at the table. I stayed standing. She looked up at me and said, "You shouldn't be alone so much. Then why do you stop coming to the laundromat?" The words slipped out before I could soften them. Her eyes widened slightly. Then she looked away, and that was answer enough. She set her cup down carefully, like the sound might crack something. "I thought it was better," she said. "For who?" I asked, quieter now. She didn't respond right away. She just stared at the steam rising from her tea, watching it disappear into nothing. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "For both of us." I stepped closer without realizing it. One step, then another, until I was standing beside the table, close enough to smell her shampoo. Clean, familiar, like comfort. She lifted her eyes to mine. Her gaze didn't move away this time. Her lips parted like she was about to say something, or like she was about to stop herself. My heart beat hard, stupidly loud. I didn't reach for her. I didn't touch her, but my body leaned in anyway, just slightly. Her breath caught, and for one suspended moment, everything went quiet, the kettle cooling, the clock ticking, the whole world holding its breath. Then the front door opened. A voice called out from the hallway. "Mom." Claire. Her daughter. My friend. Mrs. Hale flinched like she'd been slapped, her chair scraping back sharply. And I stood there, frozen, teacup in my hand, feeling like I'd almost stepped off a cliff without realizing it. After that night, everything changed. Not in a dramatic way. Not with shouting or slammed doors. Just in the way people avoid looking at each other when they've almost done something they can't undo. Claire stayed for 2 days. 2 days of her laughter upstairs, 2 days of her footsteps, 2 days of her voice filling the house like she still belonged there, and 2 days of her mother becoming someone I didn't recognize. Mrs. Hale didn't sit in the kitchen anymore. She didn't make tea. She didn't hum. She moved through the house like a shadow that didn't want to be caught. Polite, quiet, efficient, like she was erasing herself, and me along with her. When Claire finally left, hugging her mom too quickly, promising she'd call more, Mrs. Hale just smiled like she believed it. Then the door closed, and the silence came back. Only this time it felt heavier, because now the silence had a memory. I try not to think about the almost kiss, the almost moment, the way her breath had caught like she'd wanted it to. But my mind kept replaying it like a song you hate but can't stop humming. A week passed, then another. I stopped seeing her, not at the grocery store, not in the kitchen, not even in the driveway. It was like she'd rearranged her entire life just to avoid crossing paths with me. And it did something to me. Something ugly. Not anger exactly. More like humiliation. Because maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe she'd been kind, and I'd turned it into something else because I was lonely and stupid and young. One evening, I came home later than usual. Not because I had plans. Just because I didn't want to walk into that house and feel her absence in every room. The air outside was cold, the kind that makes your ears sting. As I reached the porch steps, I saw her. Mrs. Hale was sitting on the front porch bench, wrapped in a cardigan, holding a small thermos in her hands. Her hair was tied back again, controlled, guarded. She didn't look up right away, but she knew it was me. I could tell by the way her shoulders tightened. I stopped a few feet away, hands shoved into my pockets. "You're out late," she said. Her voice was calm, too calm. I let out a short laugh. "So are you." She didn't smile. There was a long pause where neither of us moved. The porch light above us buzzed faintly. A moth kept circling it, desperate and stupid. I stepped closer, slowly, and sat down on the opposite end of the bench. Not too close. Close enough. Her thermos clicked softly as her fingers adjusted around it. I glanced at it. "Yeah." She nodded. "Habit. Chamomile." I asked. She looked at me then, a flicker of surprise. "Yes," she said, almost quietly. "Chamomile." Of course it was. I stared out at the street. It was empty. The neighborhood looked asleep, like it didn't want to witness anything. "Claire didn't tell me she was coming," I said. Mrs. Hale's jaw tightened. "She didn't tell me either," she replied. That made me glance at her again. The way she said it, like she wasn't hurt anymore. Like she was tired of being hurt. I swallowed. She saw us. Her fingers paused on the thermos lid. She saw nothing, she said quickly, but her voice betrayed her. Too sharp, too defensive. She knew it wasn't true. I leaned forward slightly, elbows on my knees. She asked me about you, I said. That made her go still. What did she ask? Her voice was careful now. Controlled. I hesitated. She asked why you've been acting weird. Mrs. Hale let out a breath, slow and quiet, like she'd been holding it for weeks. And what did you say? I looked down at my hands. My thumb rubbed against my palm over and over, like I could erase the feeling. I told her you were tired, I said. A pause. Then she whispered, that was kind. I shook my head slightly. It wasn't kindness. It was self-preservation. She turned her face away from me. The porch light caught the side of her cheekbone, the faint lines near her eyes. Not flaws. Proof. Proof she'd lived. I couldn't stop myself. Why are you avoiding me? I asked. The words came out quieter than I expected. She didn't answer. So I pushed, gently but recklessly. Did I do something wrong? Her laugh was small. Bitter. No, she said. That's the problem. I felt my chest tighten. She looked at me then, really looked at me. And for a second her eyes were too honest. Too open. I'm not supposed to want to be around you, she said. My breath caught. The street stayed silent. The moth kept circling. I didn't move. I didn't speak. Because if I did, I might ruin everything. Her fingers trembled slightly on the thermos. I keep telling myself you're just lonely, she continued, voice low. That you're confusing comfort with something else. I swallowed hard. And what if I'm not? I asked. Her eyes flicked to my mouth, then back to my eyes. That tiny movement, so quick it could have been accidental, felt like a confession. She whispered, almost like she hated herself for it. Ethan. My name sounded different in her voice now. Not like a memory, like a temptation. I shifted closer, not touching her yet, but close enough that the warmth of her cardigan reached me. Her breathing changed. Slower. Shakier. I could see the moment she lost control, just for a second. The moment she almost let herself fall. Her hand lifted slightly, hovering near my arm. Not grabbing, just reaching. And she stopped. Right before contact. Right before everything. Her voice came out like a question she was afraid to hear answered. Tell me the truth, she whispered. What do you think you're doing? I didn't answer her right away. Not because I didn't know. Because saying it out loud felt like stepping on a thin ice and pretending it wouldn't crack. Her eyes stayed on me. Steady. Waiting. The porch light made her face look softer than it probably was. Or maybe she really was soft, and she just spent years learning how to hide it. My throat tightened. I don't know, I said finally. It was the only honest thing I could manage. Her jaw clenched like she hated that answer. She looked down at her hands, still wrapped around the thermos, knuckles pale from holding it too hard. You should go upstairs, she said. Just like that. Like we hadn't been standing at the edge of something. Like she hadn't just asked me the most dangerous question I'd ever been asked. Still here. What? She stood up quickly, too quickly. Her cardigan swung around her like armor. I said you should go upstairs, she repeated, voice sharper now. It's late. The cold air suddenly felt colder. I stood too, confused and embarrassed all at once. What is this? I asked. 1 minute you don't, she cut in. One word. Quiet. Firm. Like a door shutting. I watched her walk inside without looking back. No lingering glance. No hesitation. Just gone. And I stood there on the porch for a long moment, feeling stupid for thinking that night was different. Feeling stupid for letting myself believe she was reaching for me too. I went upstairs, but I didn't sleep. I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every second on that bench. Every pause, every breath. The way her eyes had flicked to my mouth. It had been real. I knew it had been. So why did it feel like she'd erased it in 10 seconds? The next morning, I heard movement downstairs. I waited until the house was quiet before I came down. The kitchen was spotless. Too spotless. Like someone had cleaned it to keep their hands busy. There was a sticky note on the counter. Not for me. For herself, maybe. It read, called Daniel. Daniel. The name hit like a small punch. I didn't know a Daniel. But I knew that name didn't belong to Claire. It belonged to a man. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at that note like it was a clue I wasn't meant to see. Later that day, I heard her on the phone. I wasn't trying to listen. The walls were just thin. Her voice was low, careful. I didn't expect you to call. A pause. No, I'm fine. Another pause. Then something softer, almost bitter. I said, I'm fine, Daniel. The way she said his name, like it carried history, like it carried exhaustion. I backed away quietly, my chest tight. So that was it. That was the twist I didn't see coming. She wasn't just fighting guilt because of me. She was fighting something older, something unfinished. That night, she didn't come out of her room. The next day, she left early, came back late, and when I passed her in the hallway, she barely looked at me. Not cold, not rude, just absent, like she'd taken herself away before I could. After 3 days of it, I stopped going downstairs. I ate in my room. I avoided the kitchen. I avoided the porch bench like it was cursed. My laundry piled up again, but I didn't go to the laundromat because I didn't want to sit in that chair and remember her. A week later, I came home and saw a car in the driveway. A different car. Black. Clean. Too expensive for our quiet street. I froze on the sidewalk, grocery bag in my hand, staring like I didn't have the right to breathe. The front door opened, and a man stepped out. Mid-40s, maybe older. Tall. Wearing a coat that looked like it had never been wrinkled. He didn't look lost. He looked like he belonged there. Like he'd been there before. He turned back toward the doorway and said something I couldn't hear. Then Mrs. Hale appeared behind him. She wasn't smiling, but she wasn't pulling away either. Her hair was down, her posture straight. She looked composed, like she put herself back into the shape she used to be. The man glanced toward the driveway, toward me. Our eyes met for a brief second. Then Mrs. Hale's gaze followed his. She saw me standing there. For a moment, her face changed. Not panic, not shame, something worse. Regret. She opened her mouth like she might say my name. But she didn't. The man said something again, and she stepped back into the house. The door closed, and the porch light clicked off. I stood there for a long time, holding my grocery bag like it was too heavy. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message draft was still open from days ago. Unsent. Me. Did I do something wrong? I stared at it until my eyes blurred. Then I locked my screen. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. I didn't see her for 3 more days after that. Not really. I heard her footsteps, heard cupboards open and close, heard the soft click of the front door when she left. But she stayed out of my line of sight like she was avoiding a mirror. I stopped pretending it didn't bother me. I stopped pretending I was fine. Because it wasn't just attraction anymore. It wasn't just curiosity. It was that stupid, dangerous feeling of being noticed, and then being erased. On the 4th night, I came home later than usual again. The grocery store had been empty. The cashier barely looked at me. The world kept doing what it always did, moving on without caring. When I walked up the porch steps, I saw the porch bench. Empty, but the porch light was on. That meant she was awake. I stood there for a second with my keys in my hand, staring at the door like it could reject me. Then I knocked. Not loud, just enough. A few seconds passed. I almost turned away. My stomach was already twisting with embarrassment. Then the door opened. Mrs. Hale stood there in a plain sweater, no makeup, hair loosely tied back. She looked tired. Not tired like she hadn't slept. Tired like she'd been carrying something heavy and couldn't put it down. Her eyes met mine, and she didn't ask why I was there. That was the first thing that made my chest ache. She stepped back slightly. Come in, she said. I walked into the quiet house, and the smell of chamomile hit me immediately. Of course, the kitchen light was on. 1 cup was already on the table. She'd made tea for herself, or she'd made it for 2 and hoped she wouldn't need the second. I didn't sit right away. I just stood there, hand in my pockets, looking at her like I didn't trust my own thoughts. She didn't move much either. She stayed near the counter, fingers resting on the edge like she needed something solid. I saw him, I said. The words came out flat. Her expression didn't change, but her shoulders sank slightly. Okay, she replied. That okay wasn't calm. It was surrender. I swallowed. Who is he? She stared at the teacup for a long moment, then quietly said, my ex-husband. That surprised me. Not because she had an ex-husband, because she'd said it out loud, like she was tired of hiding the obvious. He came back. I asked. She nodded once. He called me. A few weeks ago. I felt my stomach tighten. And you didn't tell me. Her eyes lifted sharply. Not angry, just wounded. Ethan, she said softly, you're not supposed to be part of this. I let out a breath through my nose. Almost a laugh. Almost bitter. Yeah, I said. I figured that out. She flinched like my tone hit somewhere tender. Then she walked to the table and sat down slowly, like her body didn't want to hold her up anymore. He said he wanted to talk, she admitted. He said he missed his life. He said he made mistakes. I sat down across from her without thinking. The table between us felt like a line drawn on purpose. And what did you say? I asked. She looked at me then. Her eyes were glossy, but she wasn't crying. I told him I didn't know, she whispered. That answer didn't make me feel better. It made me feel terrified, because it meant she was still standing in the doorway of her old life. And I was just a strange new feeling she didn't have room for. I stared down at my hands. Then I said it, quietly, carefully. I wasn't trying to ruin anything. Her voice cracked slightly. I know. I looked up. My words broke off. My throat tightened. I forced myself to continue, even though my heart was pounding like it wanted to stop me. I don't think you realize what it did to me, I said. The way you looked at me, like I mattered. Like you remembered me. Her fingers curled around her mug. She didn't speak. So I kept going, softer now. I've been alone for a while. I admitted. Not in the dramatic way. Just in a way where you stop expecting anyone to notice when you come home. Her eyes dropped, and that killed me, because it meant she understood. Finally, she whispered. I tried to stop it. I looked at her. Why? Her lips parted, but nothing came out at first. Then she said the truth. The one she'd been holding back like a secret. Because I liked it, she said. And because I'm old enough to know what liking something can do. My chest tightened. I didn't move. I didn't reach across the table. I just stared at her like my body was afraid one wrong motion would make her disappear again. She inhaled slowly. Then she said, quieter than before, I don't want to be the reason you regret your 20s. I shook my head immediately. You're not. Her eyes met mine. And for the first time in weeks, she didn't look away. She stood up, walked around the table, and stopped beside me. Close. Not touching. I could feel her presence like warmth. Then her hand lifted, and she placed it gently on my shoulder. A simple touch. Nothing dramatic. But it landed like something permanent. I looked up at her. She swallowed hard. I can't promise you anything, she whispered. My voice came out rough. I'm not asking for promises. A long pause. Then she nodded, almost like she was agreeing to something she was terrified of. Her hand stayed on my shoulder, and she gave me the smallest smile. Not happy, not safe, just real. Okay, she said, and for the first time in a long time, I believed her. Weeks passed, then months. Not like the movies, not like fireworks or confessions shouted across rooftops. Just life moving forward quietly. She didn't rush me. I didn't rush her. We settled into the small rhythms that had always drawn us together. The chamomile tea she made without asking, the hum of the kettle in the morning, the way she left the porch light on for me when I stayed late at work. I learned the exact moment to arrive at the laundromat, so she'd already be there, chair pulled just right, book open to a random page. Not to force conversation, just to exist in the same space, letting the silence do the talking. I'd fold my clothes slowly, eyes flicking toward her hands without meaning to, and she'd glance up, a small, knowing smile tugging at her lips. Some days, she let me help with the groceries. I carried the black coffee she drank every morning, and she never reminded me it was hers, like she trusted I'd know. The smell of it mixed with the faint tang of detergent in her kitchen, and it became home. Claire visited occasionally, always giving us space, always smiling like she somehow understood that we weren't doing anything wrong, just waiting for the world to quiet down. We had benches now, outside the small park near her house, where she sometimes sat to read. I'd join her with a thermos of tea or a new book. No words needed, just presence. One foot on the pavement, one on the grass, the air carrying nothing but faint bird calls and the occasional car passing. The night we nearly crossed the line, the night with Daniel, faded into memory. Not bitter, not painful, Just lessons etched softly into our routines. The porches, the kitchen table, even the chamomile, it all carried the weight of what had almost been lost, and yet somehow hadn't. She laughed one morning at 8:47 a.m., exactly when I had shown up with my jacket half on, fumbling with the keys, still too sleepy to form words. It wasn't the laugh of a woman in a rom-com. It was dry, observational, faintly exasperated, and it felt like sunlight slicing through the ordinary. I watched her for a second longer than necessary, heart tightening in a way that wasn't urgency or desperation, just recognition. This was her. This was us. Messy, imperfect, slow, deliberate. Sometimes she left a note on the counter, never signed, never meant for anyone else but me. Coffee first, then the world. And I read it like scripture. The bench, the tea, the black coffee, they weren't symbols. They were proof. Proof that love could exist quietly, that could be patient, that it didn't need to scream to matter. One evening, months later, we sat together on the porch. The wind tugged lightly at her cardigan. My hands rested near hers, careful, tentative. She didn't need to speak. I didn't need to ask. The silence was full, comfortable, true. Finally, she looked at me and gave that small smile, the one that had pulled me in from the laundromat months ago. "Okay," she said softly. And that one word, as simple as it was, carried everything we hadn't said. I leaned back against the railing, letting the night air fill the spaces between us. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel paused. I didn't feel lonely. I just felt here, and I knew she felt it too. The bench creaked under her weight. My hand brushed hers briefly, and neither of us moved away. Some things didn't need words. Some moments didn't need promises. We just existed together, and somehow that was enough. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?